a dream that we'd all die for, a reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might just help a man up to his feet or hold a newborn, but no matter what I do, my hands remembering my rifle.
Welcome to Veteran State of Mind. I'm your host, Geraint Jones, and I'm very glad to be able to bring you one of my oldest friends today. We've known each other for 30 years. We're from the same village. We served in the same regiments. It was Ryan who got me my job in anti-piracy, which gave me the chance to start writing, which has led to my career today. So one of my oldest mates, one that I'm very thankful to, really glad to have him on my podcast. Ryan was he served in the infantry, Iraq, Afghanistan, Northern Ireland, and then he's worked Libya, Iraq, Syria. I'm missing one. Oh, and now he's in Ukraine at the moment. So we talk about all that kind of stuff. I'm going to dive into it really quickly. I just want to say a massive thank you to all of you who are supporting the podcast Patreon. For as little as £1 a month, you can support us on Patreon. We got thousands of listeners, 10%, 20% of you chuck in £1 a month. Then we can pay for a couple of episodes with that for the recording, hosting, all that kind of stuff. So massive thanks to everybody that's doing that. I know some of you put more than £1 a month in. Really, really appreciate it. And those of you who can afford £1 a month, because I know not everyone can, and that's not, that's not being flippant. Times are tough. Belts are getting tighter. Just tell people about the podcast. You're obviously here for a reason. If you enjoy it, please tell someone. That's all that we kind of ask. Help us grow the podcast. And I also want to say a massive thank you to Combat Fuel, veteran-owned, veteran-operated supplements company. If you are a serving soldier, their stuff is, forget the accreditation now, but Informed Sports, it's all past that stuff. You're Gucci with it. Check them out. They're in the show notes. I use all this stuff myself, so I vouch for it. And Zulu Alpha Straps, great company, veteran-owned, veteran-operated, supporting the podcast for a very long time. With great watch straps, lovely different patterns, lovely different designs, durable and hard-working watch straps. Check them out, guys. They're both linked up in the show notes. The link, if you want to contribute to the Patreon, is down there as well. Thank you, sponsors. Thank you, patrons. Are you patrons or patrons? I'm not even sure. Whatever you are, thank you very much to you. So without further ado, please give a very warm welcome to my great friend, Ryan Evans. Ryan, welcome to the podcast, mate.
Big Gez, been a long time coming.
Cheers, mate.
Cheers,
with a nice
see you.
Cup of coffee, a bit different to our usual reunions.
I know, indeed. We're obviously getting older now.
I mean, we do usually have big black cylindrical shapes in front of our faces, but that's a different story. For anyone listening, obviously they don't know where we are right now. It's kind of weird because we are in the village. Well, we're in the village next door to where we used to live, but we're 100 meters from the school
that we both went to, yeah.
Primary school we both went to. We've known each other for probably about 30 years, something like that.
Well, when did I move up here? So it would have been 90, 93, 94. So yeah, long time.
So all right, so just under 30 years, mate.
Yeah.
Pretty long time. I think one of the things we've always found quite interesting is that for some reason, whatever reason, you, me, and I think maybe that's it from our primary school actually, kind of were compelled to have this life in the military, revolving around the military. You were in the army, now you're still working war zones and everything. I was obviously in the army, now my work still revolves around soldiers, war and everything like that. I think it's fair to say we're both obsessed with it. Where the fuck did that come from, mate?
I don't know. I mean, from my sort of immediate group of friends, I'm the only one that branched out into the service. I think from your side, obviously you're a year above me, I think you're the only one that I know of that went that way. And then, I've been out of the army now since 2010, but have constantly been deployed around the world in conflict zones doing different jobs thereafter. So I think it's for me, it's my comfort zone. I took some time out a couple of years ago and tried to apply myself to a trade. I tried to become an electrician. Hated every second of it. I'm happier driving around in some of the worst places in the world, and I feel more at home and comfortable doing that than I could ever be at home doing something normal.
Ryan, this is an intervention. Bring in the doctors. Mate, it's fucking mental because I was speaking to the lads the other day. Some of the lads from my year went round to Gil's place to watch a movie, which we'll talk about in a second, actually. And I was just saying, like, I thought, you know what? I think Ryan's been in war zones every year since 2004.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Like, bring in the shrinks. All right, let's digress a little bit, mate, because one of the things that we love classic Arnold Schwarzenegger.
We do, indeed.
And have you had the chance to watch the new Predator yet?
I have. I've watched it twice.
All right, this is interesting. We might be wrapping up the podcast early. Why is that then, mate? Why did you watch it twice? Was it to just confirm how gash it is?
Right, first time was on a flight back from Poland last week.
Right.
So I watched it, downloaded it onto Disney Plus on my phone, watched it on the flight. So I thought, right, I got to give it justice. So my first sort of quiet day at home, banged it on again. There were some parts of it that I really liked, and there were some parts of it that I thought were horrendous.
What parts did you like?
The feral kind of predator design I liked. When I seen the close up at the end of his face, I kind of went, ooh. But that whole kind of, bring it back, because let's be honest, the franchise has been butchered over the last 10 years, hasn't it? So it was never going to be any worse than the last couple. But it went back to basics. That what I did like about it was it took away the soldier element, and it became more about the hunter. And if you remember back to the first one, Arnie didn't beat him as a soldier. Beat him as a hunter. Yeah. And I thought that was good, how they narrowed down on that. So there was some good parts and there was some bad parts, but
Yeah, I thought it was good concept, executed pretty poorly. Like, I thought the fight with the grizzly bear was great. I mean, I could just watch 90 minutes of Predator fighting a grizzly bear.
Yeah.
But so like I think one of the reasons I was disappointed was because it had been hyped up so much. People saying like, oh, it's the best one after the first one. And that's a tall order, mate. Because
massive.
Predator 2 is great, and I think Predators is great too. And then there's a bit of a drop off then to Alien versus Predator, and then there's a massive drop off to the Alien versus Predator sequels. Like those are turbo gash.
Yeah, agreed.
And then I think this one fits in between Alien versus Predator and the Alien versus Predator sequels.
Yeah, I mean there was a little bit. I enjoyed the first Alien versus Predator. And don't tell that to everybody, but there was parts of it.
I like the first one, mate.
That I like.
Yeah, I like the first one.
But I did enjoy it. I think the concept was good, but if they'd have done a whole, if it would have gone back to sort of, medieval China or medieval Japan or something like that, do you know what I mean? Or they could have made it so much, so different.
Well, I think there might have been a reason that they picked a Native American woman, and it has something to do with woke Hollywood.
Yeah.
But to be honest, like, I would love, even like just cut down the length of the movie and do a series of just different ones in different predators in different time periods. Have a feudal Japan one, have a medieval, like have a Crusades one, and it doesn't need to be, you don't need to have these massive backdrops in, just like have a predator that's picking off people around a Templar castle. There you go, I'll give you your next fucking idea. You're welcome, cut me a check. All right, the big question is though, mate. Oh, mate, you know what would be amazing? Predator and Conan times.
Oh, crom.
Yeah. All right. Who's winning? Arnold Schwarzenegger in Predator versus Arnold Schwarzenegger in Conan.
Conan. All day.
I think you would, wouldn't he?
All day.
Yeah. I think he's way more brutal than Dutch.
With the riddle of steel.
Yeah. All right, mate. Now we've got the important stuff out of the way. Let's go back to kind of like this idea of like where soldiers come from, because I'm sure you'd admit yourself, you're not normal for wanting to be in a war zone every year. Do you reckon you're born with that? Do you reckon it's made?
I think it's a combination of two very different things. I mean, the nature versus nurture is definitely, fits into that somewhere. I think for us, where we grew up and we were lucky enough to live in a rural area, where there was forests and rivers, and we spent a lot of time there. From a young age, I always had an air rifle or a shotgun or something like that. So I was always, I had a big brother who I looked up to and, idolized. He was in the military. My dad would always tell me stories about past relatives that had served, and my grandfather had served. So, it was always something that was there. It was always something that I kind of aspired to be. And I think as I got older, I was always a lot more interested in the great adventure, so to speak, rather than academia. Instead of reading about doing something, would rather be out there doing something. And then I think, the stars aligned, so to speak. And by the time we came of age, obviously 9/11 happened and the world completely changed. And, we were fresh 18-year-olds. And once we got on that ride, it didn't stop, did it?
Al-Qaeda really squared us away, to be fair, with the timing of their attack, mate. Because like you said, it was just perfect. I mean, you were 18 when you went to Iraq on your first tour, weren't you?
I was. So I landed, me and my brother deployed, and I think it was 2 days after my 18th birthday we touched down, yeah.
You touched on a couple of things there that I think's really kind of worth digging into. One is the outdoors thing, because you're right, not everyone has that. You know, not everyone has, one, they don't have the access to maybe rural areas and outdoors, and two, probably don't have parents or other people that push them into doing it. Because I mean, you like, sport was a thing for you as well, wasn't it? Like both did sports.
Both, yeah, played rugby a lot.
Yeah, and you know, I think you got to give parents a shout out for that. You know, not just encouraging it, but just leaving you to your own devices.
Yeah.
So, because there's one thing being outdoors with your parents, it's another thing going Lord of the Flies in a fucking forest. You know, and I think that's just so important, mate. And definitely, you know, without sounding like grumpy old man, I do think that is something that a lot of kids are missing out on now. Like, for good intentions. You know, I mean, you're a parent yourself.
Yeah.
How are you walking the line between Lord of the Flies for your kids and not wanting them to end up, you know, running some kind of banana republic dictatorship down the woods?
Yeah, I think I've still got a long way to go with that. I mean, my kids are still young. My eldest son is 10, you know, and he's 10, but he's a big, robust, you know, he's a big lad, and he's, you know, they live in a rural area. So they've got access to the woods and the fields and the rivers and all that sort of stuff. But whether or not they'll go that way, you know, but the boys, I don't know. I think it's too soon to tell yet. I have mixed feelings on whether or not I'd want my children to serve in the military. I think that I would support any decision that they'd make. So, but I think time will tell on that. I think give it the next 4 years. Let's get into the teens and then see how they go.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, mate. Because there was, like you mentioned, you know, your granddad served, my granddad served. I definitely think when we grew up, there was a lot more of a nobility about it, because you're like, oh well, our granddads literally took part in, like, you know, defeating fascism and liberating Holocaust survivors. Now it kind of like bought Tony Blair a bigger yacht, you know, and it's like, well, because it's one thing, you know, like you look at that then and you're just like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Obviously, I do it again. You're still doing it, pretty much. So not there's that side of it, but I do think that the nobility has kind of come off the kind of the perception of it a bit. Oh,
absolutely. I mean, I remember sitting there as a young lad, and you know, my grandfather telling me stories about when he got to Belsen in '44, and there was still, you know, Jews living in the camp because they had nowhere for them to go. And he was in the Blues and Royals, my granddad, and he said every morning they'd go and do fizz, then they'd all sit on their armed vehicles in a square, and they'd watch, was it Pierpoint, the hangman? And he would come out, and there would be, you know, X amount of, you know, people that had been sentenced to death. And he said they'd all sit there drinking brews on their armoured vehicles, watching him hang Nazis.
I think we have uncovered the genetic reason why you are mental.
But you know, you grew up listening to stuff like that, and you listen to his cousin was in the Welsh Guards, I think he was in, and he lost a leg at Dunkirk, and the only thing that kept him alive was the salt water. You know, it kind of, you know, stopped the wound going bad, and you know, all these different things. And for years and years we'd had little bits. I mean, I had a German Mauser rifle in my attic for years and years growing up. Yeah, until eventually I had to hand it in.
Those were the days, mate, when you could have souvenirs.
Yeah.
They're taking a lot of the fun out of war as well. That's the other thing, like souvenirs. I mean, you've got some pretty cool bits and pieces.
I've got some cool stuff from Ukraine, yeah.
Yeah, well, you've got a cool thing from Afghanistan too, belt buckle.
Oh, my belt buckle, yeah.
So, tell people about that, mate.
So again, it's a super weird one. It would have been 2006, be the Belushi Valley, so Erzincan province, pushing from down to Taran Kout, if you know where it is. With the Dutch were in charge of Taran Kout, did an assault on a compound, did a search, ended up finding a box of old rags and stuff like that, you know, picked through it. And in there was a perfect brass Soviet belt buckle, with the star and the hammer and sickle on it. And obviously I did what every young lance corporal does and schnaffled it and put it in my bag.
For intelligence reasons.
For intelligence purposes, yeah. But, I mean, I've got boxes of all sorts of stuff. All sorts.
I think there's something just kind of human nature-y about this thing of wanting to collect souvenirs for where you went, which makes, I mean, we all like fridge magnets from holiday.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, if we want something to remember those days by, you're going to want something to remember the most crazy, intense days of your life.
Yeah.
Except nightmares, you know. Like, it's nice to have something for the shelf as well. So let's have a think about the early days of you joining the military. Then, what was it like you joined the Royal Welsh? Was it the kind of transition you expected from, you know, given what your brother had been telling you and stuff, or was it a bit of a shock to the system?
Bit of a weird one. So I was 17. I was in sixth form in Morgan Llwyd at the time, and I was going to be. I was in sixth form, and I don't remember if I can even say his name. Remember Advon Jones? Remember him?
Yeah,
teacher?
I remember.
So I
think he's dead now, mate. So, I think he might be. I don't think he's listening.
Yeah. So I was having a bit of a personal crisis on what I wanted to do, and whether I wanted to continue sort of pushing down the academia road or just bin it. So I went to see him, and he was on the last legs of his career. I think he had a month left before retirement. And I sat down, I spoke to him, and he just looked at him and he went, "I don't care." So I was like, oh, okay, infantry for me then.
I always liked him because he always used to say my dad was a dog playing rugby. I'm like, all right, anyone calls me dad a dog at rugby's is all right by me. But yeah, I mean, he basically he was basically prepared you for every RCMO you were ever going to meet. Like, I don't fucking care. And like, he had that LE captain mentality.
Oh, he was horrendous.
Oh, mate, it's fucking great. I mean, so like, this would have been what year then? This would have been 2003?
2003, yeah.
So Afghanistan's going on, Iraq's going on. So you're under no illusion that you're going to go on tour pretty much straight away.
Yeah, we get in, got to depot. I'll never forget, you know, 17-year-old kid, get off the train in Darlington, you get gripped by your screws on the bus, and you're at ITC. And it was a bit of a weird one. I was in Hal Fire Company then, and for some strange reason, we had an all-jock training team. So we didn't have any Prince of Wales Division training staff. It was all Black Watch. Obviously, the jock div hadn't been butchered at that point, so it was all individual jock battalions. And they just hated us and hammered us all because we were all obviously English and Welsh, and none of us were jocks.
There's something character building about a Scottish NCO. Like, if you had to pick an NCO that you wanted, like, if you're going to write a movie and you're going to have a training NCO, you're going to go for a jock, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, especially some of them sort of hardened Glaswegian, you know, tough as nails type characters, mate. They certainly, they certainly know how to get the best out of you, or at least how to destroy whatever part of your soul they can.
Yeah, no, mate, I think, like those kind of things are cool, because that'll, like, because you're going to get your own battalion NCOs, you're going to get to know them, so it just gives you that different flavor. Because one of the things that one of the reasons I love reading about the history of the British Army is when you've got all these different regiments from with all their own characters, especially at a time where people didn't really leave their region that much. Yeah. So you'd have this mixture of so at Waterloo, you've got like fucking Gen Highlanders fighting alongside, a battalion raised in Wales or a battalion raised in London, who, they're all British, but they couldn't be more, they're as similar as as they are to the French.
Yeah, well, they've not long been warring with each other, really, in the grand scheme of things. But it was such a culture shock, and I remember I was 17, I was a virgin, I was just totally new, fresh out the box piece of kit. And I got there, and the lad in the bed next to me, I forget his name now, was basically this lunatic from Plymouth who was 25 that had just come out of prison, I think, or something, couldn't read or write or anything like that. Total maniac. And it was just an absolute culture shock.
Yeah.
And I remember standing there, and our platoon sergeant, our first one, was a Black Watch guy. I remember when you do your first sort of drill thing, we're all stood there in our tracksuits, and he comes in his kilt, sort of throws up a kipper to the platoon commander, slams his tabs in, his kilt comes up, and just this old kind of cock and balls are just banging in between his legs. And I was like, oh my God, where am I? Oh, it was horrendous. But yeah, I enjoyed Catterick. I was lucky because, I used to phone my brother quite a lot. And, if there was anything that, he just come off seniors senior Brecon when I'd got to ITC. So, I used to phone him up and moan and complain, and he just,
so you shut up.
Tell me to shut up and get on with it.
Yeah.
But it was good. I enjoyed it.
I mean, he's probably getting more of a thrashing at seniors.
Yeah, well, yeah. He was He didn't pick up though. I mean, when I got to battalion, he was still a full screw, I think.
Right.
Yeah, he was. Then he picked up after Iraq in Northern Ireland, I think he picked up. Yeah.
What was your reasoning for the Royal Welsh rather than say like the Blues and Rolls that why Royal Welsh, right? Why infantry?
I'll tell you exactly why. So I got to the careers office. I did the army preparation course and did what every young 17-year-old lad did. Marines, paras, all that sort of stuff. And I got there and the recruiting sergeant in Wrexham careers office was a guy called Chris Carlisle. And I remember Chris, he's a lovely guy. And I walked in there and I said, this is who I am and this is what I want to do. He went, no, Royal Welsh for you, bud.
No choice.
No choice. And that was that. And I did my barb test and yeah, that was it. Paperwork, Royal Welsh, done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that's the way it is for a lot of people. It just depends who's there on the day.
Yeah, I think so.
You might have, if you had someone persuasive from the RAF, you might have been in the regiment.
Oh, God, don't say that.
God forbid. So, Iraq there, mate. Turning up in Iraq, the battalion were already out there, weren't they, when you got there? Yeah,
so I deployed, I think it would have been a month or so after that the main body had left, because obviously I was underage. Me and my brother deployed on the same day.
What was that like, flying in with your brother? So you literally flew with your brother to Iraq?
Yeah, flew in, did RSOI with him. It was very different, mate, because he was a senior full screw qualified sergeant. I was just a total Joe bag.
Yeah.
And, he used to treat me no different to
So you stop following me around, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if anything, he'd probably treat me worse than he did the rest of the lads. But, I got out there, deployed, went to Azabaya Port, actually, was the first spot. Met the lads that I'd very kind of only briefly, I did OPTAG, obviously, with the battalion, so I knew the platoon and I knew the multiple and everything that I was in. But, thinking back now, the guys were already that little bit different and treated me that little bit differently because I'd missed that initial breakout, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then it was just do every single thing that a young fusilier, a young private soldier does. You go out, you fuck up, you get briefed, you learn. And that was it. Excuse me. That was it for months and months and months. We go out, we do, pipeline patrols. We'd go into Basra. We'd go out and we provide cover for teams that were doing mortar fire missions and all that sort of stuff. So, we predominantly patrolled Basra rural south. Wasn't an awful lot going on, to be honest. We've seen a lot up and down the roads and Hart and Tampa and stuff like that. And, we used to do runs into Kuwait where we'd pick up things. And, I remember one day we did a run and we picked up huge bundles of cash, massive, huge saran-wrapped cubes of cash. And we drop them off to the police in Basra, probably to be never seen again. But I mean, for me, it was a big, wide open world. And I think the army at that point as well was, we were driving around in Land Rovers with chicken wire and cam nets on. And all the comms kit we had was all, Christ, what was it before Bowman? It was Klansman. I remember I used to catch myself on the ground spike antenna that had been plastic cuffed onto the back of it.
Yeah.
It was just...
Fucking hell, that stuff was heavy.
It was just horrendous.
Yeah. Klansman was fucking heavy, mate. And it was old school. You put the fucking net in with your little dial things on a padlock to put the net in and stuff.
Oh,
mate, with the platoon, did you go straight to support company?
I did, yeah. So when I got to battalion, I went straight to Javelin, which was a bit weird at the time. I think it must have been because we were beating up to go on ops, because a good chunk of us arrived in Mons Barracks in Aldershot at the same time. It's about 10 of us all arrived in battalion at the same time. And I remember that a lot of the lads went to A company, B company, and I got sent to, me and another lad got sent to anti-tank platoon. And, anyone who's listening, if they know what support companies like, or an anti-tank platoon or a mortar platoon's like, it's horrendous. And when you rock up there as a 17-year-old, super crow, it was crazy, but it was good. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, because the average age and the average attitude is a lot different.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was very weird for me because nearly every person there hated the army, couldn't wait to leave, and had been in years and had been thrown out of every company that they'd been in to end up where they were. But at the same time, there was this different mentality. In the anti-tank platoon, the platoon slogan was one in, all in. And there was some fantastic junior NCOs, people like Andy Harrison, Michael Jones, Angus Doughty, guys that had been in the battalion for years, and they took me under their wing and they looked after me and they showed me the ropes. And, No, it was good. It was really good.
So did you get qualified on the javelin before that tour? Were you anti-tanks just?
It was Milan then.
Was it Milan?
It was Milan.
Wow.
Yeah, it was Milan.
Wow.
I remember the first time I got my hands on Milan was in Castle Martin, I think. And I just remember just thinking, what the fuck is this? It just looked like this archaic, heavy, cumbersome piece of kit that was just awful and heavy and used to just destroy your knees every time that you went running with it. And we didn't cross over to javelin until after Iraq, I think, even after Northern Ireland. So I think we did our javelin carder in Cyprus in 2006.
Right. So you did Northern Ireland in between Iraq and...
Yeah.
Right.
So we did the last NIBAT 1 tour in South Armagh. So we took over from one para in 2005, which was very weird because we'd all just come back from Iraq. You know, we'd all had this sort of war-y Iraq mindset. And then we all redid OPTAG, got dropped in South Armagh. We were patrolling around there and going up and spending weeks on end in towers doing VCPs in places like Cullyhanna and, you know, watching them do all that sort of stuff. So it was a complete switch in tempo, which for me at the time, I mean, again, I was only a young lad. I was 18, 19 maybe at that point. So it was, you know, to go from that change in, you know, in climate, operational tempo, operational, you know, assets was weird.
One of the things that was weird, I always get weirded out by them is like, I don't know what the number is now, and I don't know what it was in 2005, but I'm pretty sure around 2000, 2001, there's like 40 infantry battalions. And then I look at like where people are going on there. Some people seem to get no tours at all. And there's other people that go from Iraq and go to Northern Ireland. And I always think like, I don't feel like mindset and, you know, that kind of side of soldiering was ever taken in. They're like, oh, well, we'll come back from here. We'll shuffle them to here. And it's like, well, yeah, but you're just taking guys that are, well, one, you're fucking people over in terms of how much they get to see of their family and stuff. I mean, how many families get broken up by back-to-back deployments? Lots. And then that is all for the reason that's bad for the army, retention. You lose loads. So there's that side of things, but also just like, you know, you take a unit back from, like, let's say you took a unit that was in, because this happened a lot too, a unit that was in Afghan 2007 and you send to Iraq 2009. Those two very different deployments. Yeah. You know, you're like, why are you doing that? Like, if anything, I mean, I know it's a bit shitty on some deployments, but look, those guys did Afghan 2008, maybe send them back to the same place. And, you know, because we have specialities in warrior, etc. Maybe we should, maybe at wartime, we need to accept that there needs to be some speciality in theatre too. Yeah. Like, you know, tough shit. Like, okay, if you really want to go to it, you can transfer over to the other battalion or something. But generally speaking, there's a particular set of skills, as Liam Neeson would say, for Afghan, and there's a particular set for Iraq and Northern Ireland. This idea of constantly moving people around just so every battalion gets a bite of each cake. I just think if you're actually looking at what's the best way to do a job, I don't think that's it, mate. I don't know what you think about that.
No, I agree, and I certainly remember that we'd come back. I'm not sure on time frames, but we'd obviously had our, you know, post-tour leave and all the rest of it. Then we got re-rolled Northern Ireland, and we went on OPTAG again, which was a completely different type of OPTAG from beat up to Iraq to beat up to Northern Ireland, completely different. But there was guys, you know, especially lads that from A Company that had been up in Alamara that had seen a significantly much higher amount of kinetic activity than the rest of us that had been in Basra, especially Basra South, had seen. And when there was incidents and, you know, training serials going on with IDF and cordons and all that sort of stuff, you could see the difference in the soldiers that had experienced sort of the kinetic activity in
so we're talking like with the PWRR battle group, the Belharry battle group, VC, exactly. Brian Wood's battle group, that kind of
thing. So you could see the difference in the guys, and especially when we go out on the ground, we had, you know, young lads with us that were a lot more twitchier and they were a lot more, you know, ready to probably start.
I mean, mate, just think about it. Like, why would you take someone that's been in, at the time, the heaviest fighting since Falklands, and then send them to Northern Ireland to do VCPs on British citizens? Yeah. It's fucking mental. You just think about that now. But I'm sure there's a lot of people drinking Earl Grey who know better than us.
Yeah, I mean, that's it, isn't it? I mean, you know, I think at that point we were all just very much, we just got on with it. And I remember actually we had a really good find in Northern Ireland, and it still sticks with me today. We did a VCP one night, and it was just when the RUC had changed with the PSNI. So all the old experienced RUC coppers had left. And it was these now new police service in Northern Ireland. It was all a younger generation that were in green overalls and all that sort of stuff. We did a VCP just outside Newtown, Hamilton. And when we caught a van, 2 Eastern European males in there. and there was like 5 Eastern European women in the back of the van being trafficked.
Oh, fuck.
I know, yeah. I mean, we did like a whole job on the van and got them out and arrested the guys. And yeah,
That's awesome, mate.
yeah, it was quite.
That's actually a nice win.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll talk more about Eastern Europe. We'll talk more about Ukraine and stuff later, mate. But you know, because I'm sure there's probably a lot of that stuff. Where there's chaos, there's opportunity for criminality. But let's talk about, because I mean, this is what's kind of crazy about this period of your life. You went from Iraq, Northern Ireland, and then they sent you to hot as hell, as in like hot as hell, kinetic Afghanistan.
Yeah. So we finished Northern Ireland. Then the whole battalion then moved to Cyprus. We did a 2 or 3 year stint, I can't remember, in Cyprus, where we basically just did back-to-back ops. So you were either on island security ops, which was easy, or you doing company level deployments to Afghan or Iraq. So the battalion was basically split up for that time period, and guys had gone everywhere. In between that time, I'd done my TOCARA, so I was a Lance Jack. And yeah, my first kind of real operational deployment was in Op Herrick 6, I think it would have been then.
What year was that, mate?
So it would have been 2006, 2007, yeah. Herrick 6. I remember, obviously we got to CAF, and that was obviously a building, growing, bustling, multinational coalition base. We got to Bastion, and at that point, Bastion was just tents. They hadn't even tarmacked the landing strip then. I mean, Leatherneck and all that wasn't there then. It was just a perimeter PESCO wall, then the camp and the airhead and all the rest of it in the middle. And then from there, we deployed out to Tarankout, where the Dutch battle group were, and that's where we launched the assault then into when we retook the Belushi Valley.
So was that the first time you were putting rounds down?
Yeah, that was definitely the first time. And I'll never forget being a young Lance Jack. The biggest fear that you had was fucking up and looking like you didn't know what you were doing, or letting your lads down, or basically just looking like you didn't know, or coming across like you didn't deserve to be there. I think would be probably your biggest fear. And I remember we were sat on this concrete skid pan in Chalks waiting, and there'd been the opening sort of phase of the op had happened the night before, and the Gurkhas and Aussie SF had gone in, taken casualties. One of the Aussie SF guys had been shot in the head and killed, and there was about 3 or 4 Gurkhas, I think, that had been shot and killed or hit in an ID blast or something. But as we were waiting for our Chalks to take us out, these, and I remember now, they were Hueys, they were Iroquoises for some insane reason in that time.
Oh, the Aussies were they?
They must have been Aussies, but I remember this, UH-1 Iroquois classic Vietnam Huey landing, and just bodies being pulled off the back and being put into ambulances while we're all just sat there watching. And that was the moment that it came real. When you're seeing guys hosing out the back of helicopters and and stuff like that, it seems surreal, like something out of a film. And that was when a lot of, you looked at a lot of the guys, and that's when everybody kind of went a little bit quiet. The guys that would normally be taking the piss and all that sort of, everybody kind of toned it down, and it became very, very real from then in.
It must have been weird not weird, I think it's weird for us, but there must have been a generation that didn't grow up on war movies. Yeah. So when they did stuff, they were just doing stuff. But now it's like, because I know what you mean, mate. I remember putting a casualty onto a Pedro once, and I was like, oh, this is just like the movies. And I think that's what everyone's thinking. I'm sure the pilot's thinking, oh, this is just like the movies. Yeah, it's like, no, the movies are a reflection of this. This isn't like the movies. The movies are like this.
It's super surreal. Like when you see stuff, and when you see like a lot of the stuff that we've seen, and a lot of the people who listen to this podcast have probably seen, and you try and process what's just happened in front of you, and the only thing that you can compare it to is sitting on your dad's knee watching Predator or Alien when you were a kid. And then all of a sudden, the wind hits you in the face, and you can taste it in the back of your mouth, and you can smell it, and you can feel it on your skin. It's such a different sensation, and it's very hard. I think even now it's hard to sort of process a lot of those things that we've seen.
Maybe it's like your brain is literally going like, you know what? If he realizes he's in the middle of a war and he might get blown apart any second, he's going to go mental. So I'm going to tell him, oh, it's just like a movie. Maybe that's something to do with it, mate. Because it's just weird. It's like, oh, it's just like a movie, this. It's like, no, it's not. It's real life. Get your head down.
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, give me an ammo count now. But I mean, Afghan was definitely an eye-opener. I mean, that was the first time I'd ever fired my weapon in anger. It was the first time that I'd killed someone. It was the first time that I'd fired the javelin in anger. and and seeing the real impact of what we were doing, the human side of what we were doing, and seeing the sort of harsh realities of war, really, and the effect that it had. And for us, it was just it was just an adventure. But then when you've seen the practical application of what we were doing and the violence that we were executing onto people, and the aftermath of that violence was horrific.
We'll talk about that, mate. One of the things you're just saying there, it's just kind of struck me, is that term firing your weapon in anger kind of doesn't really apply to British troops. I've never seen anyone so happy.
Yeah, well, exactly.
But I know what you mean though. That is the term we use. But I was just thinking, I don't think I've ever seen anyone more happy than when they're fighting. The British soldiers. I mean, and I suppose a lot of that probably comes down to the fact that it's a volunteer force. Yeah, you're fighting against an enemy who, let's be honest, don't look like us, don't talk like us, easy to hate. But yeah, that's an interesting one, that, mate. But yeah, the human cost of war, mate, like you saw it in the back of the helicopters there and stuff. And I suppose let's look at that a bit more then. That idea when you were out there, what was your thoughts about Afghans? What was your thought about the Taliban?
To be honest, I mean, at that point, to me, the Taliban were this sort of Viet Cong style mystical. You never seen them. They'd come, they'd hit you, they'd disappear. You couldn't picture what an Afghan fighter was other than what you'd been shown on PowerPoint presentations. Do you know what I mean? They were these sort of hooded, cloaked, dish-dashed up, AKs and rounds across the chest. That's what you'd be on the lookout for. But most of the Afghans that I would see were just, farmers and local village people, children. I remember that actually we were staying in an A&A compound, and this has stuck with me my entire life. I think it was the first tour or the second tour, I can't remember. And it must have obviously been Man Love Thursday. And there was about 20 of us. We were in one of those OMLT, with about 40 or 60 of those guys. We had a couple of trucks leagued up. We were sleeping outside, doing 50-50 staggering on with the Afghans. And then all of a sudden, these two little boys come on bicycles.
Oh, God.
Right? And obviously everyone's looking at each other to think, what the fuck's this? They've all got red circles painted on their cheeks, and their fingernails are all painted. And, one of these Afghan army officers kind of brought them in, and in they went to their little barracks. And
fucking hell.
That was it. And then in the morning, they kind of limped out with a handful of squashed up Afghan money, and that was them. They kind of just cycled off into the sunrise. But that was weird. As it was, obviously at night, we'd go and check on the stag positions, make sure the A&A were doing what they were doing. They wouldn't be. They'd either be, sleeping, or they'd be smacked up, or they'd just, it was just chaos. One of them had an ND right next to me with a SVD, sniper rifle, after a debrief on a patrol. He's had a naughty dentist right next to me.
I might need a minute, mate. I feel fucking sick. That's one thing that, jumping ahead a bit, during the fall of Kabul, people are like, the rights of women, which obviously I agree with 100%. But I'm like, let's not pretend that the Afghan army would a model of decency here.
Yeah, totally.
They used to, as Ryan just said, and unfortunately I've seen this, and anyone who's read Brothers in Arms knows about the locals fucking donkeys, Afghan army fucking, and Afghan police fucking kids. And also, let's be honest, torturing and murdering people and dragging their remains around and things like that. It wasn't it's kind of like with Ukraine now. It's they're this model democracy. It's not really. As the same with the Afghans. It's these noble Afghans, they embrace democracy. It's they kind of did, but they also loved fucking kids and torturing people. So maybe take that into account too. Did you see any instances of naughty behaviour other than the bumming of children?
Not really from our side. I mean, there was a couple of things. There was a couple of instances that happened on the ground that were probably not done as they should have been done. But that at that point in time was rife. I mean, bearing in mind our rules of engagement at that time were 429 Alpha.
Oh yeah. No, I mean that's it. And I mean, let's get your opinion then on. Right, obviously the big overarching mission is bring peace and stability to Afghanistan. You do that by getting the locals on side, etc., etc. In hindsight, do you think that maybe compound assaults, close air support, etc., were probably the best way of doing that?
No, not at all. I mean, our mission as it was then was to destroy the enemy. You know, the hearts and minds was a second phase to that. You know, we were all about taking ground, holding ground, denying the enemy. You know, that was our principal and primary tasking. There were certainly phases of the deployment that changed, and there was certainly other international elements that would do more to support that. The Dutch were very heavy on hearts and minds, like they dropped leaflets in and all that sort of stuff. And, you know, the Red Cross would always be there and they'd be giving packages out. But we were that undersupplied once. I remember we seen a whole load of Red Cross packages and we ended up taking half the stuff out of them.
Well, for hungry people, mate, if you're hungry.
Well, that's it. I remember one day we were all sat there and we were all our skin was cracked and all our lips were, you know, chapped and we were all in shit state. So we just, you know, went straight through the Red Cross packages and we robbed all the lip balm.
Oh, they had lip balm?
And all the toilet roll.
Imagine you're like, oh, I'm fucking starving. I'm going to have food. Oh, lip balm. Mega. I look great now for myself.
Yeah, let's all have some lip balm.
Oh, mate, I just thought what that lip balm probably got used for.
Oh.
That wasn't lip balm, mate. That was lube.
Lip lube.
All right, this podcast is taking a weird turn. Let's get back on track. Killing people. You mentioned killing someone for the first time out there. Want to talk us through the experience?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the first time I pulled the trigger wasn't with a rifle; it was with a javelin.
And you mean it, just so people listening, Ryan doesn't mean the Roman legionary javelin, which would be alley as fuck.
Yeah, so no, the javelin. Yeah, you should remember what it's called, but you know the
missile was.
Yeah, so the anti-tank weapon, and I remember exactly when it was. We were doing Overwatch for a convoy of vehicles that we were resupplying. It was called Op Lava.
Oh yeah.
We had eyes on them as they were coming through, and we PID'd a guy sitting in a position. He'd obviously come out of a tunnel or something because he popped up, and we had great thermal on him. We could see that he had something in his hands. It wasn't a weapon. It was a box. It was something colder in his hands. Well, again, you know, we were under 429 Alpha at the time, so we got authority to engage. And because of the distance that he was at, the only thing we could hit him with was with an
anti-tank
with an $89,000 anti-tank round.
Fucking hell.
So, 19-year-old Corporal Evans gets a nod from the boss to get up there and get eyes on him. And then off we went, and I managed to get a lock on him, and popped it. Off it went, and he disappeared in a blaze of glory.
Fucking hell, mate. And how did you feel doing that?
I mean, it's never really resonated any badness in me, to be honest. It's something that I was there to do. It was part of my job. I did it, and I've never really suffered with it. It was a conflict. You know, at that point, I'd been shot at by the enemy before, and I knew full well that given an opportunity, he'd have been, you know, more than happy to do the same to me.
Yeah.
But I mean, looking at him as just this sort of white hot, sort of semi-focused, you know, guy who had eyes on our convoy, you could see it moving down the road, and the platoon commander was like, right, yeah, you're good to go. And then just that excitement of, again, the overriding emotion was, don't fuck this up.
Yeah.
People are watching.
There's probably a big sense of relief when you actually did it, and because I mean, when that kind of engagement's going on, because we had our javelin lads you use them as javelin sniper basically.
Oh yeah,
and everyone's watching. The whole company's watching.
Yeah.
You know,
you think everybody's waiting for this thing, you know, waiting for it to happen, and you're just like, right, okay, Roger, and then you know, boom. That's on YouTube, me doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's equivalent, I always thought of, it's like watching someone at penalty shootout.
Yeah.
Or something. Because if you hit him, you're the hero in the company for the week. If you miss, everyone's going to be like, fuck's sake.
Well, I've done both of those things.
You missed as well?
Yeah. When I say missed, I hit the target, wasn't the right one.
Okay, I think I'm going to need this story.
But so...
We're going to have to have that story, mate. You can't leave people with that.
So first night, second tour... First night we're in Nauzad now, which is obviously in sort of central Helmand. We overtook 40 Commando, I think, on AMP Hill. Again, Overwatch for the resupply coming in. Eyes on, you know, Icon was going crazy with, you know, all that sort of Taliban chatter. And again, we got eyes on, people setting up a mortar base plate. I had a young Fusilier, give him the green light to engage, a young lad from Wrexham. And because of all of the different difficulties there are with engaging targets, with thermal crossover and stuff like that, there's a whole spiel there of, sometimes the target will bounce and it'll jump and you can't get a lock. He couldn't lock onto the target and fire. Bearing in mind, with the battery that powers the missile, you only get, I think, 7 minutes, but you train on 4, I think it is, to engage. So I took it off his shoulder, obviously bollocked him and, dug him out for being shit. Put it on my shoulder, looked and went, right, house, yeah, heat signature, yeah, that must be them. Click, boom. Wasn't them.
Fucking hell. Did it hit them?
Yeah.
Oh, 429 Alpha, mate.
Well, there we go. But then we looked at the map and we looked at everything else that was going on around them. And obviously they were all part of the same.
So you thought they were naughty boys?
Oh, they weren't. I mean, there was all civilians had left.
Right.
I mean, at the time, that place was a hotbed of...
Task failed successfully.
Yes, yeah. No, it wasn't like the local, primary school or anything like that,
That was the next tour.
Yeah, that was the next one.
Fucking hell, mate. Oh, man, it's funny. And it mad, though, it's like, again, just pull us back to the fact that, like, this is how bizarre life is. Maybe we live in a simulation and what, but we are... It seems like a blink in an eye since we were in primary school 100 meters away, and now here we are with a cup of coffee laughing about you killing people in Afghanistan. I mean, life is a trip, mate.
It is. I'd like to say that was the last. But it was not.
Welcome to Confessions with Geraint Jones. Today we have Ryan Evanson confessing his sins. Mate, okay, let's just stick on javelins for a second. Let's bounce around a bit. There must be a part of you that gets a bit of an itchy willy seeing all the javelin stuff going on in Ukraine now, because again, it's the whole thing. People always say, like, well, why would you want to go to war and stuff? And it's like, well, that's kind of what you've been trained to, like, to not go to the big game. So I think for a lot of people, even though, like, there's been a lot of taxpayer money gone down in Afghanistan through javelins, but something different to be engaged in armored vehicles, right?
Absolutely. And I've seen this firsthand because I've been lucky enough to be embedded with the Ukrainian military on the front with javelins. And I've got some great pictures and videos I can show you, whatever.
Yeah, we'll chuck them up on the interwebs, mate.
And, there's these guys, and I get, my senior producers and stuff with the media teams I'm working with at the moment laugh at me because we'll go to an area in Donbass that is completely littered with every sort of T variant that you can think of, that I would have given my left ball to fire a javelin at back in the day. And you've got these young sort of 19, 20-year-old Ukrainian kids that are, being trained up on these weapon systems in the back of burnt out factories. And they're just getting K kills day in, day out with javelins and NLAWs. And it is quite cool to see.
You saying that you got offered to have a bit of a kind of like, let's say, a bit of a blast on some, like when you were one of these Ukrainian units, and you said no. And what was your kind of thinking behind that?
Purely because I knew I'd have lost my job.
Right.
That was it.
Right.
Because I'm there to protect the media team, and as much as I'd have absolutely loved to, send one downrange and, fire into the back of a T-72, that's bucket list sort of stuff, isn't it?
Do you think there's a part of you as well, as you get kind of older, it's just like, you become... Because, I mean, you could quite easily, just as easily, be working and embedded with the Russian military, right?
Yeah.
If the cards fell a little differently.
Yeah, true. And I think you do get to a point where it no longer interests you as much. Mm-hmm. That certainly is a thing. And I think especially before the East, I mean, when I got to Kiev in the beginning of March, and we were all pretty much convinced that Kiev was going to fall and the Russian military were on the doorstep. When we got down to the Irpin Bridge, I think it was the 5th, the 6th of March, and it was just absolute, complete chaos. I think a lot of the stuff that we seen there, by the time we got to Donbass, nobody really had an appetite for it anymore. I mean, Certainly me and the small team of guys that I work with, nobody's asked anymore. Nobody wants to hang around for the airstrike. Nobody wants to hang around to watch the Uragan go off and stuff like that. I mean, we've seen it now. No one's, you see enough death and destruction in it. It loses its appeal very quickly.
Well, I think it maybe comes in waves for you as well, doesn't it? Because at the end of the day, you're still in these places, and you went to Afghan and you hit the targets, albeit sometimes, the wrong ones. But, you did that. But then it was obviously still something in you because you continued. But why was it? What was the reasons behind leaving it's 2010, you left the military, right? So we still got Afghan, like one Royal Welsh had another deployment after that, I think 2012. So why was it that you kind of decided to leave?
So, I mean, at the time, we were in Chester. I mean, I'd been in coming up to nearly 10 years or whatever it was now. I had a partner. She just qualified as a nurse. She wanted to go to Australia. I didn't really want to go back and do another one, another Afghan tour. I knew a lot of lads that had got onto the circuit. So I signed off. My last job that I did in the military was the PABI, the repatriations from Bryce. So that was the last sort of 6 weeks that I had in uniform, which is a bit surreal. And then I left, did my close protection course. So yeah, I did my CP course in Hereford. And then I think that's when me and you went chasing pirates in India.
You went first, mate, because I remember we went out on the piss one night and you're like, I'm fucking go to Sri Lanka next week. I don't know what the fuck you doing there. So I always get pissed and then I get on a boat and do this thing with the pirates. I'm like, you're full of shit, what pirates? And then I turned up for the fucking work one day and they just shut the gym down and I was like, Ryan, can you give me a job, please? And then we never actually did the job together, did we?
No, we didn't.
Together. We were always missing each other.
Yeah.
But no, mate, thank you for that because that got me into a good job. That's how I ended up in Malibu with that job, mate.
There you go,
yeah. But like that fucking job was fucking great, wasn't it?
I enjoyed it. There was I don't really do well when I've got nothing to do, me. And those prolonged periods of transit across the Indian Ocean, they used to bore me to tears.
Mate, the fucking few fucking downloaded box sets, and that's where I started writing, mate. It was on the ship. So if I wasn't doing that job, I mean, fuck knows when I ever would have started writing.
Do you remember Shakira?
Yeah, no, I always said the fucking. I mean, what I think bumming is a lot more like. Obviously, we have the LGBT community in the UK and stuff, and obviously, like homosexual relationships are very kind of accepted, but what they'd say is like any of these Filipinos who were banging the ship's kind of woman who was not a woman, they'd say, it's not gay. Because they're all married, they've all got wives, but while they're at the sea, they're going to fuck the shit out of this bloke.
I'll never forget sitting on the back of that ship in that little barbed-wired quadrangle barbecue area, and then this guy came out with like a makeshift skirt on that he'd made out of a boiler suit, and he had like a dyed felt tip coloured in mop head on his head as like a wig.
And you were immediately
and I was immediately just in love. And then had a lap dance off a Filipino boy called Shakira to Shakira.
They loved the security guys.
I was staying in the ship's hospital at the time, right? And obviously you root because I'm a nosy bastard, and I was rooting to see what medkit I could nick in the ship's hospital. And there was just this giant big box of condoms. Right. That had about, it said like quantity 200, and there was about 5 left in the box, and I was like,
Mate, at least they're not getting monkeypox. But mate, it was fucking it's nuts on it. Because I was worried about it because we had a lot of bootnecks in that job, and I'm thinking they're going to be losing their shit. Like there's someone around wearing a wig and a skirt with a big cock. They're going to be loving it. But the bootnecks tended to behave themselves, or at least they kept it quiet. I don't know. I do have my suspicions that one of them was getting amongst it.
It was all right, to be honest. I mean, those Filipino oil tankers were all right.
I love the Filipinos, mate. They were fucking great. You go on board with the latest Manny Pacquiao fight, and you're all of a sudden that's it, and you can't want for anything. It
was the Indian Pakistani ones that I didn't like, because they always used to go when we used to come over the coast and we hit the sort of Pakistani fishing fleet.
Yeah,
I remember being on a transit once, and the Indian captain moved the vessel, and it looks like a city at night, doesn't it? It's all lit up.
Yeah,
and he moved the vessel, and he basically sailed straight through the middle of the nets. And you could see the nets, like you could see the lights sort of bending behind the bow of the ship, and then obviously snapping.
Yeah.
And then the next morning, you could see all these little blips on the radar of obviously these fishermen going crazy. And he was like, "Oh yes, pirates! When they come, you shoot them." Like, fucking help me.
Yeah, that was a great job, mate. Very interesting. Go to a lot of interesting places, and the money was great.
Yeah, then the money was brilliant, wasn't it? Yeah,
it was about 400 a day as a team member,
and that was from door to door.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, exactly. Every day. Sit in a fucking hotel for a day, $400.
Yeah, I mean, the longest I did in Sri Lanka was 10 days. Sat there, 400 quid a day.
So 10 days. So you're $4,000 for getting pissed every day.
Sitting there, loving life.
I mean, that's when capitalism, you can't beat it on a day like that. You gotta love a bit of capitalism, mate.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, like it's funny as well because it's like now, you know, I complain all the time about military industrial complex and stuff. When you're in it and you're getting paid well, it's great.
I think that's why I've always stayed within that bubble. I mean, you know, I wouldn't have had half of the stuff I had in my life without, you know, I mean, Saddam and Gaddafi and ISIS and everything. You know, they've bankrolled my life.
Well, let's talk. Actually, you know what? Let's talk about Libya, mate.
Roger.
Actually, no, because you went to Iraq first, didn't you? You went back to Iraq as
Libya.
a civvy. Oh, was it Libya?
Yeah,
Libya straight from the boats, was it?
Super weird. I was in the Radisson Blue, Cairo.
Right.
Met a guy that I knew, an ex-mil guy. They were going over to Benghazi. This would have been 2011 at this point. So I got on to a guy called Carl Wynn, I think his name was. He worked for CR. I had an interview with him, give me the green light. Then I flew into Benghazi.
For the RAD? From Egypt?
No,
or you went back to the UK, so you bounced back.
And that was surreal. And you know what, right, that 13 hours film, right, it's on my, like, list of trigger warning things that I don't watch purely because some of the, you know, it's filmed that well. Like when I landed in Benghazi in 2011, right, on my own, the guy that picked me up was an ex-UKSF guy that picked me up, and I landed there and there was blown up planes on the runway. The air traffic control tower was destroyed. There was just, you know, it was just chaos. Landed in this little Turkish Airways jet, got off. There was no passport checks or anything. It was just all 17 Feb militia guys that were looking at your passport and stuff. And we were living at the time, we just set up this small little British consulate in Benghazi. And it was one official. I think there was one UKTI guy there and one embassy guy, I think, and his wife, I think. And we lived in these little corrymecs outside. There was myself, an ex-SF guy, or I think he was either SF or he was SF comms, I think he was an ex-264 guy. And an amazing guy who I learned a lot off, and I'll name him. His name's Grant Bailey, an ex-woofer. He was my first sort of hostile environment TL, and what a guy. I mean, I mean, I was still young, wet behind the ears then, and he kind of took me under his wing, taught me how to drive a B6, you know, taught me the correct sort of, you know, showed me properly my way around an AK, my way around an M4. You know, we had a HK417 as well. So, you know, he invested time in me, which, you know, at that point in time, not a lot of people give a fuck about new team guys. So, yeah, so Grant was amazing. And we did a lot of ops from Benghazi. We drive up to Tobruk and we do stuff up there. We drive up and down Rommel's Road. Yeah,
you did a lot. I remember you had some great history trips in this place, didn't you? You went to all the battlefields and everything. I
mean, I've done Leptis Magna, Cyrenia. You know, so Cyrenia sits above, so it's to the west of Benghazi, and it sits above Derna. Cyrenia is this beautiful sort of Roman Greek settlement, overlooks the cliff tops and overlooks the Med, which ultimately became a hotbed for ISIS, and then it was an immediate no-go. But I remember even then in 2011, we used to see hundreds of these Syrian refugees living on the beaches, nobody providing them aid except for Ansar al-Sharia, which was the very sort of foundation stages of what ISIL.
If you got Sharia in the title, it's probably a bit of
But, you know, we used to go out in Benghazi, mate. We used to go out to coffee shops. We used to sit there in the hookah bars and we'd have a great time and everybody was super nice. And then literally over the 6-week period, you know, all the black flags started coming out. People's attitudes started to change. Women started disappearing from the streets. The whole thing just went very dark, very, very quick. And we sort of finished up, I finished up my time in Benghazi and I went to Misrata, which is sort of in the middle. If you look at the Libyan coast, Misrata is sort of banging in the middle. And I was on the MANPADS team then, which is the Man-Portable Air Defence Systems. So we had a team of us that were escorting British military engineers and EOD guys, and we were going to do inspections on Gaddafi's former armories, looking for all these SAMs that had all been stolen, so we all and sold off to the Malian sort of militia groups. So we'd go to these huge underground bunkers that had been bombed, or some of them would be in semi okay condition, and we'd get there and these huge big concrete doors had just been dragged off, and there was just tire tracks into the distance, and we'd find the remnants of a couple of broken Sams on the floor or stuff like that. But yeah, they were basically just totally ransacked.
Yeah.
And I did that for, I think I was on the Manpads team probably for about maybe 5 months. Did some great controlled dems. We used to get a list every week of stuff that they wanted us to go and find, either take pieces off it to send back or dem it in situ. And one day we had to go and find a Tomahawk cruise missile.
Whoa. And
it was wedged in. And I thought it's going to be a load of duff. It'll just, we'll never find it. Slowly, but we did. We found it. It just looked like a big silver telegraph pole, bent, wedged in. I mean, half of it was under the ground. And the EOD tech that we had with us come up with this like way to pump the trigger in it full of silicon to diffuse it. So we did that, and then took the warhead apart and took out this big thing, and it had a big brass plaque on the back of it with the submarine and the name of the US sub that had fired.
Oh, did you have that way? That was a good fucking suit. That would have been a great suit.
That would have been a great snaffle. I'll tell you what I have got. So I've still got I'll get onto that.
The warhead.
Tell you what I have got, Ben. But yeah, so, we used to do all sorts of stuff. And Misrata, I mean, if you know anything about Misrata, that place got hammered, absolutely hammered. And we were living in the old house that the SF guys were in before us, and to look at the destruction and devastation that was around there. And, there's still an awful lot of UXO knocking around. So it was working and operating in that environment was good. Just a decent bunch of guys. We were completely self-sustained. We had our own weapons and vehicles, and we looked after ourselves, and we were away from the flagpole. So, it was really good.
So what the fuck went wrong in Libya?
Truthfully, and I've discussed this with so many different people over the years, it was because Gaddafi wanted to start trading crude oil in an African currency. He basically, he
wanted to get off the American dollar.
Yeah. From what I've heard over so many years, we're speaking to so many people, the reason why, because there was 3 or 4 uprisings in the East over the years that were just quashed.
Yeah.
I mean, he just fucking gunned all those people down, and the West didn't do a thing about it. But once then he started talking about a Central Africanized currency, and then trading oil in a Central Africanized currency, which would then cut the West.
Isn't that what happened with Saddam Hussein?
Yeah, pretty much. He wanted to start trading in euros, didn't he?
No.
Yeah.
Ish don't think so. Yeah. America.
Yeah.
Freedom eagles flying.
That's it, mate. And then all of a sudden, you guys need some freedom.
You just hear it over the horizon. Dun, 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 dun.
I worked with some crazy Yanks in my time, but
I love Yanks, mate, but they are crazy.
They are crazy.
So I guess it's kind of like an Iraq situation there, where for a minute there's that kind of like honeymoon period of, the witch is dead.
Yeah.
And then everyone's like, oh yeah, by the way, we all hate each other.
Yeah.
And then now there's no witch, let's murder the fuck out of each other.
Yeah.
So was it that kind of thing?
Absolutely. I mean, towards the end, 2012, when Chris Stevens when the ambassador was killed, I seen him 2 days before he died. So I was on the UK Ambo security detail at the time, and we went to the Rixos Hotel, and we'd had a meeting, and the American ambassador was there with his State Department security detail. And I remember I was with the boss, and he was chatting to Chris Stevens, and I remember looking at him and just chatting to the guys as you do. 2 days after that, he was killed.
Some of the team too, right?
Well, I'd imagine so. So I know obviously the guys, the SEAL that died. So it was the SEAL, the Tyrone Woods, I think his name was. The ambassador, the technical advisor guy that was up there doing some work, and I think somebody else as well.
That's well glossed over, that incident, isn't it, when you think about it? The fact that a US ambassador is fucking decapitated and stuff. Like,
there was some naughty stuff was going on up there.
Like, you really think there's a lot that's happened in the last 20 years, mate, that just seems to just be like carpet,
yeah,
and like, I don't know, man, like that seems to should have been a lot bigger incident than it was.
Well, we had a hit put on our ambassador about 6 weeks before that, where 2 of my mates got hurt, bad. There was an RPG strike on a vehicle, on a B6. One of the guys took a load of RPG. The RPG initiated on the seal of the rear of the vehicle. Think of where the back door is. Initiated there, then pepper potted through the roof of the vehicle, sort of just throwing frag everywhere. One of the guys took a load to the back of the neck and to the arm. Then one of the other guys, who was the vehicle commander, took a huge piece straight through his back. Nearly killed him. It was only because the QRF, those American guys that were in the annex, crashed out to them and basically saved their lives. So after that, we pulled the team from Benghazi, and every time we wanted to operate, all our gear was in that American compound. We had B6s there, we had an armory there, and every time we wanted to do a task, we'd fly from Tripoli, fly to Benghazi, move to their compound before the clients had arrived, spin the team up, back to the airport, pick them up, do whatever tasking we want to do. And then obviously then, we'd sort of recondition in reverse after that. So when that attack went in, I was on leave, I think, at the time. And I remember, speaking to the lads about it, and all hell was breaking loose. It was horrendous, really. And it changed everything. Libya completely changed after that.
Yeah, so presumably this is all tied into what you're saying about the black flags coming up, and it didn't just happen overnight. No. All of a sudden there was a group there. Do you think it was like kind of already like a really sympathetic area towards extreme Islam, and then it was just, or was Al Qaeda, etc., already established there?
I think there's always been that foothold in that region, and I think it's a hotbed because obviously the other side of the water you've got Yemen and all the stuff that exists there and everything else. And, the Arab Spring was in full flow at this time. Everything that was happening in Syria, it was just a powder keg.
Yeah.
And I think the way that the generic sort of we as the West, the way that we dealt with that, we were watching it rolling towards us and we didn't do a fucking thing.
Yeah, it seems to be that, all right, give air support and SF to get rid of the bad guy, quote unquote. I mean, I'm sure he was a bad guy. But then, all right, what's next? It's kind of like being like, mate, can you help me, help me build some furniture? Right, first thing we need to do is demolish the old furniture. Yeah, Sam, come here. Demolish the old furniture, then smash the new one up and then go, you're welcome, and walk out.
Yeah, like building an IKEA sofa. We're going to blow your house up first.
Fucking mad. It just seems to be like, all right, well, what comes next?
Yeah.
I don't know, mate. Like, if I've got my tinfoil hat on, which is usually correct on stuff, I just think, well, there was never any plan for it to, because the thing is, we'd already gone through this in Iraq of what happened. So the idea that 7 years later, or whatever it was, 7, 8 years later, maybe a little longer, people are like, and no one at a meeting went like, hey, do you remember 8 years ago when we didn't have a plan after removing the dictator and things went really bad and hundreds of thousands of people died? It's like, shush. Don't want to hear that.
Shut up, Cal.
Yeah, shut up, Cal. I'm going to fucking bruise on. How does that not come up? Because the thing is, mate, as much as I'd love to think that these people are idiots, I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that these people in the corridors of power are idiots. So that makes me think that they know, and then they just go...
I don't think people care, mate. I mean, to jump forward, to 2017, I picked up 2 high-ranking Brit officers from the American, what was it called? The BDSC, the Baghdad Diplomatic Support Center, where the mill side of the airport. And as you do, is you listen in as you're driving these fucking idiots back into these different embassies and compounds and stuff. And I just remember listening to them talking about, what percentage of Mosul are we going to allow the Iraqi army to destroy? Mm. And I just remember thinking, wow, that's mental. Everybody's just got, everybody has their own little mandate, and then they do that job for 2 years, they pass it on to somebody else, and then that's it. Nobody really gives a fuck, do they?
Yeah, I think it's easiest to think of these people in the same, because if you said right, El Chapo doesn't care how many people die from to get rich, you go, yeah, of course it's El Chapo. But then we look at our people and we're like, well, they don't think like that. They got a suit on, got a tie. He's clean shaven. He don't think like that. Well, and I think when you start thinking of the people that make these decisions of our place being of the same mindset of an El Chapo, then you're like, well, yeah, of course it makes sense. They don't give a fuck. They want to get rich. They want to get money. They want to get up the ladder. They want more power. And that's just, I think that's just human nature. Just because you wear a suit doesn't mean you're any less brutal than El Chapo.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, thinking about all these different things that happened, especially at the end, where are we now? 2014, I was the British Embassy Operations Security Manager. And when we had to pull the plug to evacuate the embassy, because Libya had just gone to utter, rat shit, the Americans evacuated their embassy. The following morning, we were already running evacuation operations at the port with HMS Bulwark and the Marines and that were there, and we were getting British passport holders onto the ship and off to Malta. The Yanks left. It was just us. And then we ended up doing a I think it was a 32 vehicle, armoured vehicle convoy from Tripoli to Tunis. That was a long drive with all sorts of craziness going on in between. And then when we got to the Golden Tulip Hotel in Tunis, secured the AMBO. We had skeleton staff left. We had about 6 or 7 diplomats left. I got a phone call, right, saying, right, sack all the lads.
What?
And I was like, what?
Fucking
I said,
hell.
swear to God, mate, I had 42 operators, good lads, guys I'd worked with for years, guys I'd gone through with as an operator, as TL. And he said, right, yeah, get rid of the lads. He said, they're there, we're not paying them. You know, as and when we stand the contract back up, the ones we want we'll bring back.
Fucking hell.
So I got all the vehicles in, secured all the weapons, got all the lads together in a big sort of hollow square. Am I right, lads? Thank you very much for that stellar effort and that nearly 1,000k drive that we've just done. Right, you're all going to be receiving your flight tickets in the morning. Please don't go mental.
No security insecurity, mate.
Well, that's it. But I mean, ultimately, I think I went back into Libya 6 weeks after that. Went back in on my own and met up with, we had a commercial operation running there, did a bit of asset recovery and got some stuff back, got a vehicle, ultimately drove that vehicle from Tripoli to Tunis. It was one of the vehicles that the Brit Mill had left behind, brand new B6. Ended up having a massive catastrophic RTA. Only person that survived was me. Broke my back, broke my leg, ruptured my kidney. You know, I was in a bad way. I was in intensive care for nearly 3 weeks. I think I was in intensive care for. And then I was out the game for 4 months. And then after that, as soon as I kind of got I think it must have been 6-7 months later, I got my fit to redeploy shit. And yeah, they were like, right, yeah, cheers. Contract cancelled. It was like, fuck, mega. That was the end of Libya.
And then what was next? Iraq, ISIS, Iraq.
Iraq, yeah. So Baghdad, back end of 2015, start of 2016. Yeah, so
just in time for you to stoke ISIS into existence.
Yeah, and then I was in Baggers for 2 years with the embassy. And then I went up to Erbil, took over running ops for BP, plus all the ad hoc stuff. And that was an eye-opener. So getting into Mosul and Kirkuk in 2018 was chaos. Seeing the aftermath of what had happened in Mosul, especially eastern Mosul. And then we'll be crossing those, like, the only bridges that were still intact. I think there was 2 bridges still intact, I think, then. And the rest were just all pontoon bridges. And, you know, the town had been obliterated, mate. Totally. And the horror stories that were coming out that we were seeing and the things like that, man, people were eating fucking grass and cats and stuff. Do you know what I mean? It was horrific.
How dare they? Mate, so that's almost like seeing a World War II era city after the war.
Oh, yeah. Well, Raqqa was even worse. That's another story in itself. So finished in Iraq. I think it was back end 2018, 2019, finished in Iraq, came home, had a year off, went half mental and got divorced and all the rest of it, like you do after spending like 10 years in places like that. Went to Syria in 20...
I'll sort your head out.
Yeah. Do you know what, mate? It was the best thing I ever did. Best thing I ever did, because I left Iraq, obviously went through a really difficult time, got divorced, sort of, you know, had to start again in a new house and all the rest of it, made some, you know, some poor life choices. And I lost a lot of faith and a lot of confidence in myself and my abilities. And it tested me in a big way. And it made me realize that over the years, I'd certainly become comfortable having toxic coping mechanisms. And it made me identify that, and it gave me a kick up the arse that I'd needed, that if I hadn't have had, I probably would have been in a much worse position than I am. And when I got the job offer, it was super weird. So a guy from an American company based in Florida got hold of me through a friend of mine who was ex SF SIGs. Basically just said that they needed people to go out to Erbil to train a team for doing basically security, static security, mobile security for a team of EOD techs going out to do land clearance in Syria. So I was like, yeah, sound. So off I went, did that. Ended up doing the whole thing. So I got the STL slot. There was me, a Dutch guy, there was a South African RMP guy, and there was an Italian army, Italian Carabinieri, whatever he was, guy. Nice guys, you know, decent enough. The EOD techs that we had were all ex-Brit Mill, great guys. Probably some of the best contractors I think I've ever worked with in my life, to be honest. Brilliant guys. Took us 6 weeks of meetings and all that sort of jazz to get over into Syria. When we finally got in, myself, well, 3 of us crossed over initially to do a recce. We ended up in Hasaka. Hasaka's an interesting place because as you're driving into Hasaka, some of the towns are controlled by the Russian army. That was my first time I'd ever met the Russian army up close was in Syria. And then I remember to get our registration documents signed, we had to drive to Raqqa to do it. And obviously we left at 5 a.m, drove in a soft-skin vehicle, 3 of us, to the center, just to the downtown central Raqqa from Hasaka, which took like 9 hours driving through the desert. And it was just, mate, it was insane. Total can't, it looked like Stalingrad.
Yeah, fucking hell. And was there fighting going on there at the time, or is the fighting there, is it controlled by one group or another at the time?
So the fighting that was still ongoing, I mean, officially then Raqqa had been sort of pacified, and the fighting was more centralised in Deir ez-Zor.
So who's controlling Raqqa then? Russians and Syria, like Syrian government?
So it was a split. So when we were there, it was the Syrian National Army, and there was also elements of the YPK and stuff as well. All the registration that we did was all through the YPK side. Right. So we could only operate with them and through them. We couldn't have any affiliation with the Assad side at all.
Feels like Libya and Syria, I mean Yemen as well, but I mean, I think I don't want to say that Yemen's a forgotten war because I don't even think it's ever been in the public knowledge.
Yeah.
Whereas Syria was obviously like in the public knowledge for a bit, and I think people have totally forgotten about it now, even before Ukraine.
Absolutely, and some of the stuff that was going on there was insane.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of Middle Eastern reporters now who went all the way through Syria, cameramen and photographers and stuff that had been shot. I've got a cameraman friend of mine who's Algerian. He's been shot like 4 times in places like that, and it's a huge place and it's a beautiful place as well. It's very different from Iraq.
It's Mediterranean.
Yeah, it's,
you know what I mean? Like we're talking in the same places like Turkey and.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, the Turks have got a lot to answer for in Syria, but that was interesting. Obviously, we got Ghost out of Syria as well. Our little dog that we saved, Pooch, who now lives his best life up in the north of Scotland. So that was, it was worth it for that. But for me personally, Syria gave me back my confidence, I think, and I needed that. And I think all of the therapy and everything that I could have done in the UK, which probably would have worked but taken much longer, to drop myself back into shit
and not being Ali
at the deep end, and being able to still do that is what kind of made me realise, right, you're all right. You've been through a bit of a shit time in your life, but ultimately, you're still you. Everything's cool. Get on with it.
It's that old wisdom, mate, and get back in the saddle.
Yeah, exactly.
There's nothing, no bit of advice or wisdom that doesn't already exist for us. We just choose not to listen to it until it's time, and you got to find it.
That's it.
The hard way, mate.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, Syria. I was there for about a year. How long was it? 6 months, 7 months, something like that. Came home. Again, I tried to assimilate into society.
Was this the electrician phase then? Yeah, it was the bad phase.
But decided to be an electrician. Don't get me wrong, I enjoyed it. To be fair, it was all right. I got to work with my other brother who's an electrician. Made some good money out of doing it. It was okay, but it just wasn't. You can't sustain. I mean, it's unsustainable. You don't earn that much money, and you've got to, now you've got to pay your child maintenance.
Well, the amount of kids you knock out, mate, it's unsustainable. For people like me, people like me who've got a BFA on the end of the dick, it's all right.
Yeah.
Like.
So it just wasn't enough, and I just, I had to buy myself a new house and all the rest of it. So, I got back into the security side. Did that for a year on different sort of security projects,
like residential and stuff.
No, so I was I worked for
of course, yeah.
So I was with a team working in and around London and stuff, doing sort of asset protection, stuff like that. You know, it was good, well paid, good guys, but mind-numbing.
And then you did the COVID stuff, wasn't it?
Yeah, I did a bit of the old COVID stuff as well. That just kind of...
Working for the deep state.
Yeah, dragged me over the line. And, but to be honest with you, mate, it saved me, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to pay my bills. So, you know, I slag it off, but...
Well, I'm glad other people could lose their businesses to keep yours.
You know, it's like my brother says to me, war and famine.
I mean, it's fucking true though.
You know, where there's chaos, there's cash.
There fucking is, mate. I mean, who's the mug, really? Like, you know, we know war is a racket and all that stuff, but knowing that, how come 10, 15 years ago we didn't buy a bunch of shares in Lockheed Martin? I mean, we're the fucking donuts.
Yeah, there you go.
Really,
yeah,
really, mate.
Absolutely.
You took a few of those $400 days on the beach in Sri Lanka and stuck those in a fucking arms company portfolio of shares. That'd be worth a lot of money now, mate.
100%. But yeah, then what happened then? Christ, Ukraine
next, mate. Yeah.
Big old Ukraine. What a place.
So Putin squared you away, got you out there. Just as the pandemic work's coming to an end.
Yeah.
Vlad, Ryan, I got you back, mate. Got you back. We'll get you back in the field.
What a place. I know you've been to Ukraine.
Very briefly, yeah.
But I mean, I've been lucky enough that I've travelled all across Ukraine. First of all, beautiful country. It's an amazing place, amazing people. And what's happening there is mind-boggling. It's like the Second World War. What's going on there, but with modern weapons. And looking at it tactically, it just doesn't fit right. It doesn't, like, no one side has air superiority. You know, when the Russians came in, they didn't knock out critical infrastructure. The trains still work. You know, the MSRs still function. You know, they got rid of, like, Mariupol was, you know, razed to the ground, but Odessa, you know, is left relatively untouched. So I can't call it. I mean, every day I have to do these, you know, tactics updates to people around the world on what I think the next phases are going to be and things that are happening, but it's so hard to call. I mean, the biggest, you know, the two major offences that have happened is, you know, obviously when they came in from the north into Kiev, and then basically stopped about turning left and went back up to Belarus. And then for this, you know, this iron cloud of artillery that keeps pushing in from the east into Donbass, what's going to happen there? I think now that they've negotiated the Severodonetsk River, which was their biggest obstacle, because trying to get their armour across that took them months, and they sustained heavy casualties. But now they've managed to negotiate that river crossing, and they've poured their armour across. You know, it's anyone's guess what's going to happen next now.
Yeah. I mean, my personal gut feeling is that I don't think Kiev is what they want, because I just think, one, it would just take, I think, one, that really unites the international community, right? Yeah. Because a lot of people, myself included, are kind of like, you know what, fucking let them out Donbass. Like, that's kind of my opinion. It's not worth dragging the country through war. It's not worth risking nuclear war. Give them fucking Donbass. But I think, like myself included, if they start trying to say, well, now we're going to annex Kiev and Western Ukraine, I'd be like, well, okay, this is a bit of a different kettle of fish now at this point.
If they take Odessa and they own the Black Sea ports, then, you know, Ukraine is going to be in a world of hurt, because all they're going to have left then is the main supply routes west into Poland. But, you know, will that happen? I don't know.
I feel like Russia's needs to come out of it with a win, right?
Yeah.
But that win for them doesn't need to be annexation of all the Ukraine. I think a win for Russia is if they say, because you have to look at what they said they went in for, right?
Yeah.
They said, well, we got in to kill Nazis. Well, they can say that they've killed Nazis. And they could say we went in to liberate the Russian people in the Donbass. Yeah. Well, they can do that. And I think that sooner or later there's going to be, as a case of all these things usually come to an end, is I think there will be, at some point, America, Britain, etc. will go, right, enough's enough.
Yeah.
And they'll sit down with Russia, and then they'll make a peace, and Russia gets to turn around to its people and say, well, we liberated these people, Russian speakers in the Donbass. And Ukraine gets to say, well, okay, these horrible people have taken this part of our area from us, but we kept Ukraine, which will be true. And I think at the end of it, that's probably kind of what's going to end up happening. The question is, how long does it go on for?
I think it's super weird now, because when you go to, like, I'm flying back to Kiev Saturday, right? And I've only been gone there I've been out of there a week. Kiev is now pretty much returned to relative normality from what it was in March to now. Like if me and you walked out of this building now and we were in central Kiev, you wouldn't know the war was going on. I mean, there's no more checkpoints on the streets. There's a couple of blockades here and there, and the air raid siren goes off pretty regularly. But in terms of what it was 4 or 5 months ago, it's a totally different kettle of fish. But saying that, you go 30 minutes down the road and you're in Irpin and you're in Bucha, which are just, what the Russians did there was unimaginable.
So is that Jen then? You think the massacre? Do you think the massacre was Jen?
I've seen it with my own eyes.
Yeah,
100%.
Yeah.
So when we got into Bucha the first time, and I remember it now. So we went to Hostomel first, where the Maria aircraft is, the biggest aircraft in the world, or what's left of the Maria, was in a hangar, fucking basically blown in half. And we seen the airport and where the paratroopers landed and all that sort of stuff. We seen that. And then we managed, it used to take 2.5 hours of basically boxing around all these little villages. We got into Bucha, and mate, I've never seen anything like it in my life. Imagine the scene, like The Walking Dead or a zombie apocalypse film, right? It was cold, it was snowing, and we arrived in this rich, nice town that's full of investment and supermarkets, and all the cars are Range Rovers and BMWs, and there's a little bit of the old Soviet Union architecture still present, but not as much as it is in Kiev. Certainly not as much as it is in the east. This was a bustling, nice place. It was a really nice place, and all of a sudden there's hundreds of destroyed tanks everywhere.
Wow.
There's the bodies, mate, that we seen. It was horrific.
And that's civilian bodies.
Yeah, everywhere. And there'd be just everywhere you went, there would be people that had been killed in situ.
So how did that? Because obviously one of the things that is kind of like a thing with genocide or mass murder most of the time, something that usually has in common is rounding people up and then killing them together. So this sounds like it's different. Like these people are just all over the place. So what do you reckon happened there?
So from the people that we interviewed and the people that we spoke to, apparently, again, I'm not. This isn't gospel, but the units that were there were these Chechen units that had basically been told that they were there on a safari. And people weren't allowed out at certain times, and people could only go and get water or do at certain times. That if people deviated from different things, like I went into a woman's house whose husband was a welder, and he was outside dead with his brains blown all over the pavement. The bloke had been there probably about 2 weeks, rotting.
Fuck.
And apparently these troops went to the house to get his welding gear because one of their vehicles had broke. Obviously, this is his livelihood. He tried to stop him. And they just blew his brains out in front of his wife. And then she got on her knees and begged them to kill her so she wouldn't be alone. And they just laughed at her and walked off.
Mental.
And so some of the stuff that we've seen, we went, there's a small apartment block in Bucha, and we drove in there, and it's been well documented. I mean, there's been reports and stories done about this block of apartments. And we got in there, and the Russians had basically turned it into a defensive position. They'd rolled cars over at the entrances and basically turned it into a little fighting position. And you can imagine the old Soviet era blocks of apartments, where the basements were. So where the steps down to the basements, there was just bodies everywhere. And we found bodies with their hands tied behind their back. Very obvious execution standards. So, we've seen a lot of bodies where there was muzzle burns on the mouth. You'd be able to see the muzzle char on the skull where it was obvious signs of execution, and you'd see them everywhere.
So these again, was that Chechen positions?
Well, we believe, or the local people that we spoke to said that they were Chechens that did that, but I mean I don't know whether that's true or not.
Just thinking now, was it you that came across a Chechen hospital in Afghanistan? Because the Chechens, it seems to be, for a small place in the world, seem to be this group of people who appear in the most grisly fighting all over the fucking world.
Yeah.
And obviously there's different sides of the Chechens too, because these are the pro-Russian Chechens, whereas
there's
the ones
others,
who are in
exactly,
Afghanistan.
Yeah. There's Chechens that fight for the Ukrainians as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, these guys, a lot of the vehicles that we were seeing as well, the identification markings on the vehicles were Chechen. But that again is weird when you see modern fighting vehicles destroyed in place, and that's something that's surreal. You know, when you're out with these news teams and you're moving around these areas and you're looking at modern 21st century armoured fighting vehicles blown to pieces, or you're looking at like T-80 vehicles, T-72s that have got the turrets blown off.
No. Well, it must be weird for you because you were in Iraq close enough that you will have seen that in Iraq, but that couple of years difference is because by the time you see them in Iraq, there's no dead crew around them. Or anything like that, you know.
Oh, mate, we've been to places where the vehicles are still burning, and we came across one scene where there was all these dead Russian soldiers, and one of them had had their head chopped off. Is
that the video that you sent me? And then afterwards, you sent me trigger warning after I'd watched it.
Don't watch this. But I tell you what, the biggest thing about Ukraine that I found surreal was enemy aircraft.
Right.
And it was myself, a Argentinian photographer and a Jordanian cameraman. We were in where were we? It's not called Bucha. It's right in the east. The name will click to me in a minute. You've got Konstantinivka, and then you drive down there. The name will come to me in a minute. We went to a cement factory that had been hit, and we were on the ground, obviously, give them the quick sort of spiel, right, 10 minutes, and then we're off. And I could hear an outgoing artillery position about a K to our east, I think it was. You could hear it firing out. And next thing you know, just this. And then normally, like, this is the second time it happened to me driving to Kiev as well, when everybody got out their cars on the highway and just ran onto the side of the road. But you're looking, and that normal when you're in the mill and you hear fast air, you think, all right, it's ours. That's ours. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden we just heard this, this whoosh, boom, huge. It must have been about 300-400 meters away from us, right? It must have been small ordnance, but still, bang, the whole world erupted. I looked up and I just seen this big, long, silver, like fuselage with like the little like red stars on the wings, afterburners, and off it was gone. And I just thought, fuck me, that was a MiG.
Mad.
And I said to the photographer, and he went, "Did we just get bombed?" And I was like, "Yeah, I think we did." I think we did. We better go.
Fucking hell. Yeah, mate, like, you're right. That's just something that's not really been experienced by Western
it's surreal,
troops.
Mate. Turbo surreal. Like, we did a job a few weeks ago, and me and my mate, one of the security guys, we had to abandon our armoured vehicle because it got broke. We had to leave it with these two random blokes that welded it together for us, and we went to collect it the next day. And as we're driving up there, chasing the sunset really to get this armoured back, from nowhere, these two helicopters just come up over the horizon, right? And my mate gives me a nudge, and he went, "They've got rocket pods on the side, and I can't tell what they are because all the kit's the same."
Yeah. You don't know if they're Ukrainian or
you don't know
Russian.
who's who. And at some point, when you're in not Bucha, the name it's doing me head in sort of like Slovyansk area around there. You're that close to the front. It could be either side, and all of a sudden this helicopter comes out, banks. You can see all its rocket pods on the side, and you can just see the blue and yellow Ukrainian flag. He obviously has a little quick look to see who we are, and then off he goes, tree height.
There must be a fucking insane amount of blue on blue out there because with them all using the same kit.
Yeah, it's weird. And they've all just got these little like tape, like yellow armbands on,
which you're definitely seeing when you're engaging someone from 300 meters away.
It is a very crazy, surreal place, and especially when you get right down towards like the flat, and you go out with some of these guys and you see it. But what the really scary thing is that artillery. When that artillery comes in and the noise that it makes is just terrifying.
Do you reckon that's probably what's going to make the difference? Is that the difference maker out there, the artillery?
I think so. I mean, the last numbers that I sort of officially had, again, this has changed now because obviously the HIMARS have come in, and then they're making a huge difference now. But before the HIMARS came into play, I heard for every one round the Ukrainians were firing at the Russians were firing 10 rounds back.
Right.
You think they've got all this stockpiled. You've got 120 grads from the 60s You know, you've got your 220 Uragans from the 70s and the 80s, and you've got, you know, everything else in between. And, you know, they've got these big Katyusha rockets that fire, and they drop the sub-munition, cluster munitions. The Russians love them. They drop those cluster munitions everywhere. You know, same as the Grads and the Uragans, you know, they just park up and they just fire those things off.
What's the tactic behind the cluster munitions then? Is it to terrorize local populaces?
I think so. They use them in different ways in different locations. So in Mykolaiv at the moment, they're dropping cluster munitions on the town. You know, they seem to just be sporadic targeting, and to me that is probably to flush the civ pop out. So it's sort of terror, because there's no direct sort of military infrastructure targets that they're hitting with cluster munitions.
Yeah.
But then again, when they use those, there's a road called the MO3 that goes from Bakhmut up to Slavyansk, and you can turn off that, and it's the road up to Seversk. And I've been on that road a few times, and the cluster munitions come in there, and you can tell that they're directly targeting the artillery positions that are in and around those locations.
Right.
So they get used in different ways in different places, if that makes sense.
Right, bro. We're pretty much out of time, so there's a lot of
Just waffle.
there's a lot of deaths, mate, and a lot of obviously uncovered. But you've been a lot of places. What's like something maybe about the human condition or about life that you've learned from being in all these? Because I mean, you're in these places where humanity's at its worst and arguably sometimes at its best. So what's something you've kind of picked up over all these years?
I think that very, very small acts of kindness in the right places can change a person's life for the better. Giving somebody a hot brew or a hug, or, you know, in places like Bucha where they've just buried their husband in a shallow grave outside their doorstep, or, you know, be it in Broughton and signing up to give Alzheimer's people, you know, money, £5 a month or whatever like that. You know, the little things that you do, you've got to maintain your own humanity. You know, you have to, and you have to take every opportunity to do nice things for other people. I think so. That's what kind of keeps me from losing my shit, I think. Take every opportunity to do something nice. Take it. Don't miss opportunities, because the humans, I think, are capable of such great acts of violence, but they're also very capable of great acts of kindness as well. And you see that, and when you see it and you smell it and you taste it, it just makes you realise you have to take every opportunity to do something good.
Amen to that, bro.
That's it.
Mate, thanks so much for today, mate. Go and do another 20 years of mad stuff, and then we'll come back and do
I know, what else?
Now, I love you, bro. Thank you so much for coming on, mate.
My absolute pleasure. I love you, don't I?
And speakers, we the speakers, you the listeners, we will catch you next time. We love you guys too.
Take it easy. Thank you very much.
Sold a dream to all of us, a dream that we'd all die for, a reason for us all to live and something we could fight for. I might